Legislative Committee. And so we certainly want to thank the great crowd that has come out today. And we want to thank our friends here at New Hope Village for hosting the forum. Thank you for the refreshments. So, and isn't this great with the open area? Just and is anybody in the recliners yet? Opportunity awaits. So, so welcome everyone. We are going to just get started right away. We're pleased that Senator Mark Segabar, Representative Brian Best are here today. And we're going to go ahead and get started with the questions that have been prepared. We have a couple of questions, and then at the end we will be reserving some time for you to ask questions as well. So here we go. We'd like you to first begin with opening comments regarding your thoughts on the governor's state address. Tell us what committees you are sitting on this year, and then what are your priorities for this session? So we'll give you a little extra time with this first question.
I'm going to break stride and stand up because there's so many here I like to see faces, whether they're smiling or frowning. First, I want to thank the committee here for setting this up. I always have problems getting dates reserved because with 5 counties, I have a forum every Saturday, and to get this thing all to fit together with 2 for Carroll County kind of ruins the schedule. So I had to offer a different schedule than you guys first offered, and you were able to accommodate that. So I appreciate that very much. It will make the year go just that much quicker. The year is going very fast. This is already week 3. It just came to an end, and so we've got bills that are. I better back up the truck here. First, I'm on the Ag Committee this year and the Local Government Committee. I'm the chairman of the Human Resources Committee, and I've been on Human Resources for the last 4 years. So that's not a change for me. The change is being the chairman of that committee. Human Resources can generate more bills than all the rest of the committees out there can in a year. And my days are just running from one proposal to the next, pretty much. And so I've kind of got my stride finally. But it's kind of like running a race. You can't start off real fast and expect to finish by winning. So I'm more of a tortoise than I am a hare when it comes to this. So those are the committees I'm on. The governor's message this year had a title called Smarter and Smaller Government, and that was his theme, and so he talked mostly on areas where he thought government needed to get smarter. And if I can pull these off the top of my head, priorities there would be education and see, this is the problem with pulling you off your head, especially my head. Traffic safety was another one I know, and the reason traffic safety is an issue is when you go down the interstate in Des Moines, they have a couple of these DOT billboards that are electronic lights, and they'll tell you every day where how many have died in traffic accidents in Iowa. And so every time you go to town, or every day it goes up. And last year we set a record for traffic deaths at 402. So he's recommending bills that would make texting a primary offense. So that would put it up there certainly with alcohol, and maybe that will help and maybe it won't, because driving anymore is a skill that's lost. I think defensive driving has gone out the window as far as I can see, and not that I'm not guilty of it as well, but how do you regulate that? But it's certainly becoming an issue for Iowa, and so not only is it changing the penalty for texting while driving, it's also looking at safer roads. And I've seen some improvements down in Des Moines just over the summer where they've kind of changed the way the lanes run that make it a whole lot more friendly as far as merging or moving through in your lanes when you have 3 lanes of traffic like there. Des Moines is certainly not the biggest city. If you go to Arizona, you'd be at 6 lanes of traffic. And if you go to Washington, D.C., I think there's maybe even 12 once in a while. So but we're aware of that, and we're going to work on that issue this year as well. And other bills this last week was really the first week that we've had an opportunity to have floor action, and it occurred mostly on Thursday. And the biggest issue to start the year was budget shortfall. That was one of his smarter issues that I was trying to remember, was dealing with the budget. And of course the governor said we weren't going to touch K-12 education, we weren't going to touch Medicaid, and we weren't going to touch backfilling counties and cities from the property tax reduction of a few years ago. Those were going to be safe from cuts. So if you take those three out of the picture, you're talking about a very large chunk of the state's budget that the rest of the cuts will have to come out of. And since we're already through 7 months of the year, a 2% really is a 4% cut, because if you started that cut at the beginning of the year, you could have worked with 2% out over a whole year. Now you've only got 5 months left of this year to figure out how to make that kind of a cut. So it's very difficult, and there was a lot of time spent by the governor's office and the House and the Senate Appropriations Committees to figure out what and where would be the best place to cut. So it wasn't an across-the-board cut like happened a few years ago, which was a 10% cut across the board. It was specified in certain areas, and a lot of times it allows the department heads to figure out where the best place to cut is. It's not specific, because how do we really know where the greatest area that you could cut would be unless you're dealing with it on a daily basis, and that would be the department heads that would know that. So we did get that bill passed on Thursday. It didn't get to the House. I think they're going to pick it up on Monday, the way I understand. So that's our first order of business. In subcommittees last week, there was a subcommittee held on defunding and changing how we fund women's health issues in Iowa. That got out of its subcommittee, and so it's on to the next step. And I think it may come up this week in the Judiciary Committee, which I'm not a member of. But Planned Parenthood was involved in another big issue, and I think that's the two biggest issues we had last week. So we're off and moving, and it's kind of fun to be in the majority, and that was another point made by the governor in the address. It's kind of a whole different atmosphere this year, and there's a learning curve involved here, I'll tell you that right off the bat. If you've never had to be a chairman of a committee before, there's a lot of steps that you got to get right. And I'm a prime example of doing everything wrong probably the first time, but I'm getting there, so thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Brian Best, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, New Hope Village, for hosting this. And it's, again, I'm going to say it's an honor to represent all of you in this room. And it's going to be a very interesting session. There's no doubt about that. First, I'll touch a little bit on the collective bargaining. That was a question that was asked. And I'm not on that committee. There's a lot of things that are being done right now, and just in the overall scheme of things, I'd say that the collective bargaining is, they're trying to find a way to give the taxpayers a little bit more leverage at the table, giving school boards a little bit more ability to make fair decisions on wages and things like that, and it'll also affect other public workers. But that being said, the information coming out at this point, to me and probably to Mark, is that there's still definitely something that's very fluid. They're still working and trying to find fair ways. I don't think that our caucus and our leaders in the House are trying to do anything that's vindictive, and sometimes public workers and teachers do feel like they're getting picked on when these things happen, but all this is really doing is just trying to sway it to a little bit a fair way of deciding on compensation and things like that. One thing the governor has talked about, and he did mention this in his speech, is the possibility of getting more people involved in the state health insurance system. And what that could do, and I don't believe that any school districts or any municipalities would be forced to do this, but I think it's just giving them the option of signing up if they want to. At least that's how I would view it, and I hope that's the case, because I think everybody out there should be able to get the best deal possible. Some folks have said that the more people you put on this, obviously, the more buying power you have. So there's some pressure going that way too. But I know there's some organizations out there that would just like to self-insure themselves, and as far as I'm concerned, that's fine. A little bit of confusion out there too is if it will affect retirements. And the ICRS system has never been part of collective bargaining, and it will not be. And I don't think anybody has any feeling that they want to take away retirement or mess with IPERS. I think that's something that is going to be held sacred. As far as committees that I'm on this year, my duties have changed a little bit. I used to be on the Health and Human Services Budget Committee and the subcommittee on budget, and I've been taken off that. Now I'm on the Human Resources Policy Committee. And then also I'm the chairman of the Economic Development Committee. And the Economic Development Committee, its main, the things that are under our purview for the most part is Iowa Economic Development, which is Debbie Durham is the chairman of that, and Iowa Workforce Development. So economic development and workforce development are our two main budgets, along with cultural affairs, and that takes up about $40 million of the state's budget. So those are the committees that I'm on, as well as the Commerce Committee, which is it's going to be a really fun committee to be on. I'm very happy to be on Commerce. Transportation, and also on the overall Appropriations Committee, because if you're the chairman of a budget committee of any kind, you're automatically on the Appropriations Committee. So those are the committees that I'm on. Being on the Appropriations Committee, we had a lot to do with the de-appropriation that Mark touched on a little bit. And we had to find money to, I guess we didn't have to find money, we had to basically recoup money that had been in the budget. The Revenue Estimating Conference is how we make our decision on how much money we're going to have to work with, and that's always forward thinking. We have a budget that's set with unknowns because the budget is set a year before the revenue comes in. So we're working on their best estimates, and sometimes the estimates that they think we will have come in short, and that's what happened. Some of that is farm economy. Probably a major part of that this year was farm economy. So we ended up over $100 million of a shortfall. And so then comes the very unpleasant task of telling folks that what you had to work with isn't going to be what we told you you had to work with because of these things happening. So that's what we've been doing. The major de-appropriations that we saw are University of Iowa, $8 million, Iowa State, $8 million, University of Iowa, the University of Northern Iowa was $2 million, and community colleges as a whole across the state, $3 million. I did argue the point that I felt like community colleges should have been held harmless, but in the end, you've got to pass a de-appropriations budget. If you don't, you can't move on to anything. So I will be in favor of the budget that we passed. I'm really concerned that corrections took a $5.5 million cut, judicial $3 million, and public safety $1 million. Public safety is the state patrol, basically. And I think what we need to do, and Gary Worthen, who is the committee chairman, firmly believes, and I agree with him, that we need to get more troopers on the road. Right now, we hear that it can be up to a 2-hour wait to get a backup patrol car to what might be a very dangerous situation. It might be a highway accident where they have to have troopers there before they can clean it up, things like that. So I'm definitely in favor of adding more state patrolmen. We're looking at least, my goal is to at least add 10 more to what we have now. We're at one of the lowest levels we've ever been in state patrol. And some folks believe that that's the reason why we're having the problem with deaths, accidental or highway deaths going higher, is because there's a lot less presence out there. We were told that, and some of you would probably think this is okay, and I do to a certain degree, that there's a lot less tickets being written because they don't have the opportunity to do just their basic function of the speed issues and things like that. You know, sitting there with the radar and giving folks warning tickets or whatever they do, because their presence is so light that a lot of us, and myself included, say, what's my odds of seeing a patrolman between Carroll and Des Moines? And I tend to drive a little faster, thinking, okay, you just don't see them out there anymore, because they're usually, if you see them on the road, they might be heading to an emergency, and they don't even bother to worry about speeders. So I do think it's something that is very necessary. I guess with that being said, I'm done.
Okay.
All right.
All right, thank you. The second prepared question for today relates to the collective bargaining, and I know, Brian, you touched on that a bit. Senator, would you like to comment on that?
One of our first priorities as far as a Senate caucus was doing tort reform. What does it mean when you say tort reform? It means legal kind of reform. And the first place we're going to head is the ability, when lawsuits, and this has been out there a long time, lawsuits, the loser pays. So if you sue somebody and you lose the case, you not only pay your legal fees, but you pay the legal fees of the person you were suing. And I'm talking this morning, if you didn't hear, the Supreme Court decided this morning, or yesterday probably, that the lawsuit against the three counties up here, Buena Vista and Sac, and Calhoun, there you are, were sued by the Des Moines Water Works over nitrates in the water. So they've lost that case. They went in favor of the counties. And so now the legal fees, if we had this tort reform in place, the legal fees that were spent on that case alone would all be paid by the Des Moines Water Works. So that would be a way of slowing down lawsuits, frivolous ones for sure, and that's what drives all of our laws typically. There's a lawsuit on something which makes the red tape go up, because now you want to make sure that you don't become liable for that very same issue or whatever you're doing. So tort reform starts first, and another piece of tort reform is going into what's called Chapter 20 of the Iowa Code, which deals with bargaining units. Every county typically has a bargaining unit with their secondary roads employees. That's probably where I cut my eye teeth on bargaining. I've gone through that process many times as a county supervisor, and put every county supervisor out there has gone through that kind of a process, so they understand how much bargaining limits your ability to make decisions locally. And as Brian was saying, it's really a local control kind of issue. And so there will be a bill adjusting how unions operate, how they get their members, and how they collect dues and that sort of thing. That will probably be all up for discussion in the near future. So that's where we're at on bargaining.
Thank you. So we have until 11 o'clock today, and we're going to open up the floor now for you to ask questions. And if you do have a question, if you'd raise your hand, we'll call on you. Please identify yourself, and if you're with a group, representing a group, please let us know who that group is. So I saw Mr. Ruggles first.
Rich Ruggles, County Supervisor. Have kind of two questions for you, and I'll cover them. One's maybe more of a statement than it is a question. With the closing of our DOT station, I think I see an opportunity for the state to save a lot more money and shut the rest of the other 17 counties down. that way it puts us all on a level playing field, and it's a permanent cut. It's not something that's gonna be just here this year. It's gonna be good forever, and I think that's something you should really consider. Did I wanna absorb that kind of money here? No, I did not, but, we made it work. We had great work out of our treasurer's office and some collaboration amongst a lot of people to get this done. Well, the DOT, the CDLs is not far behind it. So I think this whole situation is gonna have to be taken a look at it. Whether we can get it back to the community colleges, whether we can change the way the licensing is done. I think we need to really look at most of it, but I do see some savings there. The rest of us counties have figured it out, and just because we geographically live in a different place and live in an urban area, I don't think that should be a downfall to us. Okay, my second question is back to the public safety, and of course, we're staring down the face of the new jail. And the thing that I'm hearing now is that we have a current person in jail that has been sentenced to a year in county jail. And that's being driven because the state doesn't have any funds for it to incarcerate this person long-term or district-wise. So I can see this coming down further like another unfunded mandate that, and I understand we have a jail system, I understand the crime was committed here, I get all that, but those were things that were kept at an upper level. Now we're seeing it at our level, and that is gonna drive our costs tremendously higher. And it's gonna come down to the taxpayers here again, trying to support something else that's most likely started someplace else, but it's being pushed off on us. So, anything you have for on either one of those two subjects, that'd be great.
Would you like to comment, either of you, on those?
Did you say there were 17 others?
Well, I think there's 83 counties right now that do their own driver's license, is that correct?
There's 81, we'll be 82, and if Clay County accepts it, they'll be 83.
83, so we're 2/3 of the way there anyway. So essentially, it's a small piece of the pie, but it probably totals up to a lot of dollars.
But it's basically urban versus rural.
It's an urban-rural fight again, just like everything else, because we geographically live in a rural area.
No, just add.
Okay, we're working on a bill right now, and that bill draft is on its way as far as the county. And I want to commend the supervisors and Gene Seidel. You guys have all done a fantastic job. When I talk to the DOT down there, they know who you are, and they're very impressed with what you've done. And they're coming to me and saying, you know, are you ready? And I said, yeah, we're getting the bill draft going. And they're definitely on your side. They want to get this thing going as soon as possible. And thank you. Thank you for that. We really appreciate it. So our job now is to get that bill passed and get it in writing and make it immediate. And I've talked to my transportation chairman, Gary Carlson, and he's very much on our side. He wants to get this thing going. It should be a no-brainer. I mean, why wouldn't they be? But sometimes things do get lost in political issues that you couldn't even imagine get in the way of doing something that makes total sense. But he knows what's going on, and he's definitely behind me. And so Mark can explain to you where he's at on the Senate side of that.
Well, as everything that's good goes along, there's always something that wants to muddy up the waters a little bit. And the issue that's sort of attached itself to this issue is the community colleges. Now, the other city in Iowa that lost its DOT station at the same time Carroll County did was Spencer. And so long about before the session started, I called the state rep from that area up there and told him what I was going to do about adding Carroll. And I thought, well, you just well add Clay as well, because they're facing the same problem that you're facing locally. So yeah, she was okay with that, but she had some ideas of her own about how to get the community colleges involved. Well, I wasn't that sure exactly what the bill just got drafted, her bill just got drafted last week. So that's the first I've seen it.
And that bill would allow community colleges to do the whole licensing venue. The problem there is the DOT is not real happy about that because you have to have the electronic communication between the DOT on license plates and all that issue, and when you go to a courthouse, that's already in place. So it saves money to stay in a courthouse versus moving out to a community college. Plus the fact that community colleges aren't all that excited. They do things like training for CDLs and doing the testing there, but they're not really set up with the communications and the people that you would have, that your treasurer's office would have. And so they're not excited about it, and I'm not excited about that either. So we're going to sit down on Monday with the lady from Spencer, the rep there, and work our way out of this because we like to keep it clean. If we just keep it adding Carroll and Clay, it'll fly through there without a problem. But if we start adding this is a whole different idea that is going to slow it way down. We don't want to do that, so.
Thank you.
Good morning, thank you both for being here. I'm Rhonda Mark with New Hope. And last November, you both were good enough to take the time to visit with me about a burdensome regulation that I wanted to talk to you about. And that is a state regulation that requires our direct support staff to describe the services they deliver to the individuals we support in narrative form or multi-sentence form instead of using a checkbox form, which many states use to meet that same Medicaid regulation. And if we were able to make that change, it would create a lot of efficiencies for us, but most importantly, it would enable our direct support staff to deliver the care that's the first intent of what their job is. So I just wanted to ask you if you could give me and us an update of where you're at with that.
Well, Rhonda invited us, both of us, last December or somewhere in that vicinity, and to describe what was going on with the whole host of issues that community providers have with the changes in managed care, which has really turned that whole management style upside down, literally. And then I said, well, what one thing can we do that we might be able to write a bill on that will help your situation? And she says, well, you can get that checkbox thing back. They used to have it. Instead of having to sit there and write down the same thing day after day, we've served so-and-so and this is what we've done for him. And oh yeah, he had a toothache today and maybe, you have to write that all down. And a lot of times it's the same information over and over. And they used to have this checkbox where you can quickly make that report out just by clicking the boxes. This takes handwriting out of the issue for one. You know what it's like if you try to read somebody else's handwriting. So when the community provider lobbyists came in, wanted to see me to talk about issues that they had, I says, here's what, I'll be glad to help you, but I've got one issue for you. Write me a bill that will allow this checkbox thing to come back for community providers. And they came back with it last week and showed it to me and said, we call this the Rhonda Mark bill. Now that's not going. So she's well known all over. If we get this done,
I don't want that.
she doesn't want that. So we may have to adjust it, but I didn't see the name Rhonda Martin. So I sent it immediately to the drafters to get that bill drafted in. And hopefully those people are busy right now, as you might imagine. But we'll get that done, and I think that one would fly through. There's so much support out there, especially from the community providers. And probably the number one lobbyist and or citizen that comes into the building is talking about an issue that community providers are having. And so it's a big issue, and welcome to my world.
Thank you, Rhonda. I just want to echo what Mark said. Bureaucracy sometimes just overtakes things, and things that make sense to somebody in working in the Capitol or a bill writer, or I don't know how this whole thing, why we're even doing this now, that it causes you a lot of expense, and some of these unfunded mandates are just kind of ridiculous. So there's no doubt you have our support on it. And when a person from your group came and talked to me on Thursday, I told him that I would speak to Human Resources Chair, and I think for all practical purposes, his name's Joe Fry, and I think he's in support of it. So I asked him if I could have the honor of sponsoring the bill, and hopefully he'll give me that, because that's a very important thing and very symbolic in a lot of ways too, to what we do with hospitals and everybody out there. We unfund a lot of mandates that are just basically written with good intentions, but sometimes really aren't all that necessary.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Gregg?
Thank you, Trish. My name's David Gredham, and I'm local chapter president for Pheasants Forever. And in 2010, they passed that Iowa Land and Water Legacy, 3/8 of a penny sales tax by a supermajority. And I realize it's probably not great timing to be discussing if you got a $100 million shortfall in the state budget, but I'd like to know Mark and Brian's thoughts and comments on the viability of at some point getting that thing put in there, because it was put in as a constitutional amendment, whether you guys can pull back on some of their taxes and get it in or whatever, but what's the chances of that thing?
Anytime you talk about something that appears to be a tax increase, it becomes very controversial. My preference would be to try to find that money to do some of the things that are needed to be done, and I think part of that, and that's where a lot of it has become a little bit controversial, is that when somebody comes and talks about it to us, it seems like there's always a little bit of infighting in where all the money goes. If you know what I mean, it's kind of like, well, all those folks in favor of water quality, and that's their primary goal, they'd like to have a vast majority of it. A lot of what I think the intention was to create more recreational things and create a different environment in the state, or maybe a more enhanced environment for hunters and things like that, preserving some areas for that. So then the argument becomes, where's the money going to go once it's voted in? So that's something that's a little bit creating a little bit of confusion and chaos down there. I don't really have an opinion on it at this point. I'm just kind of waiting to see how things go. But I guess I would rather try to find those funds for those needed things that we need to do from within the budget that we have right now.
I have a question. You said there's confusion. There's really not. There's some kind of Iowa code chapter that says 7% for lake restoration, 10% for trails, 13% for REAP, 13% for local conservation partnerships, 14% for watershed protection, 20% for soil conservation and water protection, and 23% for the DNR, who's right now the DNR is in all kinds of hot water without getting some license fees increases or something. They're in a lot of trouble. So it's spelled out pretty clearly in somewhere.
Okay. Well, I guess then how I would frame it would say there's already some people out there that want to change it.
They want to change these formulas.
Yeah, change the formulas.
I wouldn't want to be in their shoes.
Yeah.
But-
That's where it becomes, it becomes a little bit.
And then you see on the television, Minnesota, Missouri are advertising like crazy to people from Iowa to come out for all the recreational facilities and stuff, and Iowa's like 48th to 49th in the nation for what we have for public access. So we're really poor, and that would all be a plus
Okay.
for everybody. It's not just hunters and fishermen, it's trails, bike riders, horseback riders, it's a little bit of everything.
Okay. Point well taken.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
This issue has been gathering momentum now for 3 years, that I've really noticed that there have been a lot of people down all 3 years asking that the I will get passed. I've sort of taken here we go. I've been flip-flopping back and forth on where to be on this issue. And a year ago, if it would have come up, I would have voted for it. And right now, I'm sort of backed off of that position to the point where I'd like to see if we can't find some other places in the budget. If we get the farming community to go again, it may not be a problem. we're talking about, did you have a number on millions of dollars that would generate?
Between 150 and 180 million dollars annually, and that's, you know, whatever piece of the pie is for everybody. I think our local conservation board, from what I understand, would get a little over $1 million annually, just for Carroll County conservation, which I think every one of those boards is overwhelmed. They just tight, strict budgets and not a lot of flexibility, and probably tough to manage everything that they have already.
Well, the fact that the Supreme Court said yesterday that water quality wasn't going to be
It's not going to be a lawsuit issue,
a
but it's still a
lawsuit
big issue.
doesn't mean the issue goes away at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just shown a bright light on water quality in Iowa, and it needs to be pursued, even though they lost the lawsuit. We need to keep working on it, and, you know, there was that vote back in 2010, and that will certainly help its cause, but there's not a lot of support for raising sales tax. Sales tax historically in Iowa is not the biggest generator of funds to the general fund of the state of Iowa. It's income tax that raises the greatest amount of funds. And so to add another penny, you know, you can add 3/8 of a cent. That's not impossible. That's easily done with a computer. It'll generate it, and there may be a little extra because it'll always round up. So that way, but right now I'm still open to I haven't closed my mind on the issue, so that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I understand, and I understand what the budget shortfall is. A tough question. Thank you.
And who has the next question?
Matt Reza, Daily Times Herald. Brian, you mentioned earlier the collective bargaining stuff, that the idea of it is to make it more fair. Do you agree with that, Senator?
Exactly.
What about it currently is not fair?
Here's what happens. If you go to what's the term they use? The arbitration. 9 times out of 10, what it comes down to is as a government entity, like a school or a county, they'll say, if you use the argument, well, we'd have to raise prices. We can't raise prices, but they'll always come back with, the arbitrator will say, you can raise taxes to make this. And that puts this thing at a complete disadvantage to the local control issue. And 9 times out of 10, they win with that. You can raise taxes part of the equation. So that's why it's not fair to the local taxpayer.
And just to kind of follow up on that, you know, just small schools all over the state are consolidating and closing. Does it put even more strain on them to have to try to compete with the Des Moines and the Cedar Rapids and the Buttes, whatever it may be, for what they can pay their teachers, because it does have more local control? So now you can make $30,000 in NROE versus $40,000 in Des Moines.
Well, the local school board in the local entities still have they still have the freedom to do what they want. We're not telling them they can't give raises in any way. It's just part of the negotiating. So they have the authority to give a raise.
They have the ability always.
I would think so.
We always raise taxes.
Was there a question?
Hi guys. Cindy Durkoff with Partnerships for Families, the early childhood Iowa area for Carroll, Green, Guthrie, and Ogden counties. Question with the budget shortfall. The revenue estimating committee, they will meet again in, is it March? And is there a possibility of further cuts if that number is down?
Don't know that I have the answer, but the scuttlebutt is that it probably is going up. So maybe we won't have to worry about the answer to that question. If it was drastic, you've got so little, if it's March, you only have April, May, and June, that 3 months to make a cut. I don't know, it looks like that's a rainy day to me, but I get things thrown at me every time I bring up the fact that, hey, it may be a rainy day. But how did we get into this mess in the first place? We had $900 million of surpluses 4 years ago, and every time we take one-time money and put it into a budget somewhere, it skews the budget for years to come, because that's a flow of money that you can't guarantee will be there every year. that's how we get to the cutting point. But,
Well, and I've
I don't
been
know,
around-
in that short of distance, you really can't make that kind of adjustment that quickly, I don't think.
Well, that's the hope. And I was just curious if you knew if there was a bill number attached to what came out of the Senate on Thursday, as far as.
Budget?
The
The
de-appropriation budget,
Uh,
I believe it's 2109. Senate file?
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
I was just looking at it today. I believe it's Senate file 2109.
Maybe I can find it right here.
Thank you. And who has the next question? In the back, Mr. Hudson.
130, Senate File 130.
Oh,
Frank Robinson, I represent one myself, but I have a question relating to that women's health bill that you talked about earlier. If I read the bill correctly, it sounds to me like you would eliminate all Medicaid funds to any hospital providing abortions. If that's correct, that would include like the University of Iowa, which offers many specialties, many things that you can't get other places. If that's true, that would mean that you would totally eliminate people with disabilities, mothers with low income, other people with low income from receiving some pretty needed health care. So my question is, how do you rationalize limiting health care for thousands of people in the name of pro-life? And I understand your pro-life issue, and I certainly concur with that, but I worry about all the thousands of people that would not be able to get the needed health care. Help me understand that, please.
okay. Frank, I haven't seen the bill, and so what I'd like to do is, I just need to go back and look at it and understand it better. And in 2 weeks, I'll come back and give you more of an opinion on it. But at this point, I know the intention is to keep those services for women's health available, and actually trying to make it a little bit more local by the fact that there are I've been told there's over 200. They might be faith-based, they might be doctors' clinics, places that do not perform abortions that would still be able to fill the void for any other women's health issues. And so how that would affect the University of Iowa is an interesting question, and I don't know what to tell you on that. I need to look into that.
I'm not only concerned about the women's health, I'm concerned about the health of anybody with a disability and low income, any of their health needs.
Right, okay.
Yeah, Frank, I don't know how it would affect the University of Iowa either, but the money that we're taking is the state money that is added, that was spent. That's $250,000 of state money that went to Planned Parenthood. There's 12 Planned Parenthoods across the state, but all of them are in eastern Iowa and the larger communities. There's, used to be one in Buena Vista, but that one closed a few years ago. And I think there's one in Council Bluffs. But this bill would help smaller clinics to provide services for the poor, and 200 sites across Iowa
You're
that.
talking about women's health. I'm
Yeah.
talking about a person with disabilities who might have cancer.
Well, that's a Medicaid issue.
But from what I understand, the bill would take away all Medicaid money going to some hospital.
They're not talking about that. I know you're stuck in semantics here. It's taking all abortion-intended money away, not the regular Medicaid money. I think that's what we're talking about here. So, okay? It wouldn't take Medicaid money
That's
away.
not how I read the bill, but you're probably right.
I'll check on it, so thank you.
And who has the next question? Mrs. Hager.
Virginia Hager, when I'm speaking for asking my own question. When you're talking about that shortfall that came out the first of the year, 110,000, are you, 110 million, are you talking about also the refunds that were coming in this month, the next month? Is that included in there, an estimate, or is that on top of it yet? The people that are filing for overpayment of their taxes?
I don't know how to answer that question. It probably does, because that REC has several economists and people from Iowa State and well-known experts on the economy in Iowa to try to figure out what that's going to be and what's going to happen. So if they would know what that would be, I think they could come up with a number. So I'm saying, yeah, it probably does include refunds.
Tough question, though. Yeah, I'm assuming it does.
Who has next? In the back.
I'm Doc Hannaford, speaking for myself as usual on Second Amendment gun bills. I'd like to know how they're doing, what they're in the hopper. Three specific bills, Castle Doctrine, Stand Your Ground Bill, and Constitutional Carry. How you stand on it and how they're progressing, because the funnel's coming up pretty soon.
Short answer is I'm yes on all three of them.
Matt Winchell is our, the person in the House that works on that is Matt Winchell. And I think Matt's a pretty realistic person, and generally I trust his judgment on everything he does when it comes to Second Amendment bills. I haven't seen what's out there. I haven't seen how the bill's written. I don't know where we're at on it. So, I mean, in general, I've always been in support of Second Amendment rights, and I'll continue to be. But I don't like to make any kind of announcement until I see how the bill's written and what the intent is. But for the most part, yeah, I'm in support of it.
Would it be possible for you to send me a copy of the bill that goes into the hopper?
Yeah,
All three bills.
absolutely.
I'm not a lawyer, but I can still read, even though I'm 87.
You got it.
Thank you.
I don't think they've been written yet that I know of, the drafts, but when they are, I'll send them to you.
Good. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Next question. Yes, sir, in the back.
I'm Rocco Speedman, representing myself. I'm a bit concerned about the talk on collective bargaining. If you realize that Iowa is a right to work state, an employment at will state, and the fact that teachers or city employees can't go on strike, the reason we have arbitration is because that's the only tool that they have. So I think you're messing with something you don't need to be messing with. And I hope you understand the thing a little better the next time we ask a question.
Statement. Any response?
Take
Okay.
that under consideration.
Next question. Yes, in the far back.
Hi, Angie Bob from New Opportunities Prevention Department. Just wondering if you could speak to the legalization of the CBD oil that's used for a limited amount of patients, and whether or not that's going to continue to be legal and available for those patients. And then secondly, if there's any talk about legalization of marijuana for recreational use.
I don't think there's any talk of legalization of marijuana.
Good.
I think the CBT oil issue is definitely going to come up because it kind of expires July 1st. So I know there's some folks down there that are working hard to try to find out, or try to find a way to make this workable. It's a little bit of a controversial issue, but I think that in the experiences I've had, which are anecdotal, I've seen some miraculous things being done, especially with seizure patients. What really makes it a bit of a conundrum is for a company to manufacture it, they almost need to have more diagnoses that it fits into, so it can be produced at a higher amount. So you have more patients and more need for it. So without that, it becomes controversial because the company can't come in and produce it in the state unless there's enough diagnoses to fit into it. So it's really complicated. I'm in favor of it. I think when you squeeze out the THC, there is no high. And so all it's being used for is, I'm assuming, I'm not an expert on medicine, but morphine and those things that we use now on a regular basis, at some point, I suppose, is a drug, opiate, whatever. So, I think we just need to readjust our thinking a little bit. I wouldn't want to see Iowa anything like what's going on in Colorado. Even California, where they call it medical marijuana, and you have a doctor on the beach writing scripts. Somebody just comes up and says, I got a headache, and he got a prescription for pot, and they use it recreationally. I don't want to see that. But I do think we do need to have the conversation. We really got to get started on doing what's right for people in that instance.
I voted for the medical marijuana bill the first time through, and I haven't seen a bill presented to me yet on that issue this year. I'm sure there's some out there. There could be one in Ag Committee, actually, because it would probably be an ag issue if you're producing. The problem is we have no producers of the oil here in the state because of, I don't know, there's no law allowing it and regulating the thing. And if there's ever a regulation, probably needs to be something that needs to be regulated. It's probably this, because nobody knows what the potency would be of what you're buying. And so how do you come up with a quality product that you're sure you know what you're taking and what the dosage would be? So for medical purposes only, I would probably go along with it, but for recreational use, I was at the state fair this summer with my wife, and she came home with a little tube that says marijuana on it, cigarette, and it was laying on the ground at the state fair. It was like a little cigar tube, and she was afraid to open it. I wasn't. I opened it, and it definitely was marijuana that was made in Colorado, and but the problem with medical stuff is there's no place to buy it here in the state. You have to go out of state, drive all the way through Nebraska, and probably buy it out in Colorado, where you're not sure what you're getting for sure, because you don't know whether it's really potent or not. And then you have to drive illegally through a couple of states to get back here, and you're liable to get arrested if you're found with that in your car as you get back here. So the bill actually didn't improve things in Iowa at all, because nobody could buy it here to meet their needs, and would have to travel somewhere to get it, so, which is illegal when they get out of the state. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. We have time for one more question, Mr. Gordon.
Rob Portis representing myself. What evidence does the legislature or the governor have that all of the tax cuts and credits are effective in the state of Iowa?
All of the tax credits are what?
Tax cuts are being effective, are doing what they are intended to do.
Tax credits.
Correct. Property tax relief, all of things continue to get added that are exempt from sales tax. Obviously means less money coming into the state. Couple that, the other question is, how long do you think it's sustainable for the state to continue to backfill cities, counties, and schools on this property tax cut?
I asked that very question because you had asked it of me in other venues about where economic development is on that. And while I just went to my staff person to find an answer, they couldn't really come up with one, Rob. And so I'm going to have to go one step up, and that's economic development. And maybe Brian, since he's now the chairman of economic development, has way more power to ask that question than Debbie Durham. And again, I think the fact that we're still growing at over 4% in Iowa is kind of proof positive that something is working in our favor, because we're in an unfriendly environment in Iowa as far as commercial property taxes. And that's what drove the credit in the first place, was trying to equalize that with our neighbor states. Iowa has twice the taxing rate of Nebraska and Missouri, and Arizona is 4 times less than what Iowa's rates are. So So we stand out as a place that's a high-tax state, and it's not attracting business like we'd hoped. And that's what motivated the tax credit that was passed back in 2013 to get passed, and it passed with bipartisan support. So, but that was probably the first time that had been touched. Otherwise, commercial property valuation was always at 100% of the rate of the property's value. If you put up a $100,000 building for manufacturing, it was taxed at $100,000 or whatever the cost was. Now everything else, like your home and other properties, are rolled back. Your house is usually typically rolled back 50% of what it's valued at, and there's a credit for that. But in the case of commercial, the state said we will backfill what the counties and cities would lose because they've got less valuation to tax off of now because of this credit. The state would backfill, and I think it started out with a 3-year plan, which this would be the 3rd year. And if next year is next year, I guess, and we'll have to figure out whether we think the credits are going to. There's a lot of people complaining about the credits because if you take the credits away, you raise more taxes. That's the flat story. That's my comment.
Rob, to answer your question on the tax credits on the economic development side, I do believe we do need to make sure we're getting some bang for our buck on that, and we've had conversations about this before. I'm generally I'm in favor of them, but I think that there does need to be a little bit of a test to see how many jobs are we going to get from this? Are we just putting money out there to get an industry in that's only going to employ 7 people or something like that? And I thought it was kind of interesting. I think Google and some of those companies that are coming in, and we'd love to have them in our state, but we can't give away tons of tax incentives in order to create 7 jobs or something like that. And some of these companies are very efficient, and they don't really need that many humans working for them. So I think we do need to look at that to make sure that it doesn't create more taxpayers, because in the end, that's what we need. We need more taxpayers in our state. And so that's what my thoughts are a little bit on that point of it. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. We're right at 11 o'clock. I know that Senator Sigvard and Representative Best will be here for a few minutes, so if you have a question that has been unanswered or that you'd like to ask, feel free to visit with them. I'd like to ask the members of the Chamber Legislative Committee to stand. Thank you to all of you for meeting every 2 weeks and working to prepare the Legislative Forum. I do want to remind you that in 2 weeks, on February 11th, the forum will be held in Glidden at the American Legion building. And so hopefully all of you will be out that day. We hope to see you. So again, thank you to New Hope Village for hosting us today, and have a great day, everybody.